So what are we going to talk about here? Describe the classifications and types of study designs commonly used in health-related researches, and discuss the concepts and structure of the common study designs used in health-related researches, including experimental, quasi-experimental, observational, qualitative, and mixed methods designs. So, for the table of contents, we have here, under ito sa methodology ha, di ba sa introduction, may mga subsections tayo, statement of the problem, hypothesis, significance of the study, and so on. This time, sa table of contents, our subsections are the following. Research design, the research local, the population and samples, and other parts like the research protocol, or we actually call that data gathering procedure, and then ethical considerations, if any, and statistical treatment. So isa-isahin din natin sila discuss on how are you going to make them. Pero bulk of our discussion will actually be about the research design. Kasi in research, we have a lot of designs, but in your paper, you will only choose one. So it is very important na ma-identify nyo anong research design ang applicable sa study ninyo ngayon. So actually, the research design class is the method na gagamitin natin for research. Okay, the method na gagamitin natin for your research, and we will include actually a rationale. Bakit nyo nasabi na yan yung design na applicable sa research ninyo? Ngayon, meron tayong 4 types of classification, 4 classifications of research design, in which the first one is based on time. So again, this is the classification of research design based on time. Dalawa lang ito sila, retrospective and prospective. Actually, marami kayong mai-encounter nito when you do your RRL, Review of Related Literatures. But it's very important for you to know how are we going to differentiate them. Pag nabasa nyo class na ang design ng study is retrospective, ang meaning niyan is the study begins at the present, pero we will look into the past. Meaning, ngayon tayo magsa-study, pero ang data natin will be coming from the past. So, for example, association between the use of phenylpropanola and the risk of hemorrhagic stroke. So, the condition here is hemorrhagic stroke. Titingnan natin sa present class, ito yung mga tao na nagkaroon ng hemorrhagic stroke, but we will look at the past kung gumamit ba sila ng phenylpropanolamine kaya sila nagkaroon ngayon ng hemorrhagic stroke. So retrospective kung babalik ka sa past. Actually, when you are studying COVID-19, a lot of studies, related studies about COVID-19 is using retrospective design. They are actually studying the people na nagkaroon ng COVID-19 dati. Kaya yung mga data niya, kung titingnan ninyo, the study is published 2021, but the data is coming from 2020. So, retrospective. Binalikan nila itong mga people na nagkaroon ng COVID-19 and then nag-conduct sila ng study kung anong area sa COVID-19 ang gusto nilang studyhan. So, retrospective. Yan ang meaning yan. Balikan mo yung past. Now, pag prospective naman yung study design mo, the study syempre begins in the present, but it will move forward to the future. Meaning, your data will be coming from the future. Sa sunod mo pa siya makukuha. Wala ka nang pakialam anong nangyari sa past. As long as susundan mo yung subject mo until the future kung anong mangyayari sa kanila. So we have here an example of a prospective design. Investigators were interested to determine the long-term effectiveness of influenza vaccines in elderly people. So magre-recruit sila ngayon ng cohorts. By the way, cohorts are group of people na magiging subject natin for research. So ang cohorts na yan, may grupo ka na vaccinated and then may grupo ka na unvaccinated. And then susundan mo sila hanggang sa future. For example, nag-set ka ng 1 year. So after 1 year, titingnan mo ngayon kung gaano ka-effective yung influenza vaccine. So again, the study begins at the present and ends in the future. That's prospective design. And we have a lot of study na prospective design. Actually, yung experimental natin na study is actually prospective. Like you are doing an experimental research now, you are starting with your paper ngayon, 2020, but you will be conducting the data gathering, the experimentation next sem pa. So, prospective siya. Tingnan natin sa future kung anong mangyayari. So those are the two examples of research design, but those are based on time. Okay, questions about that research design na based on time? Or may gusto ba kayong i-clarify? Or shall we move on? So we have here classification based on study purpose. Ano ba ang purpose ng study natin? So under this, we have the descriptive design. Bakit siya under sa based on purpose? Kasi itong descriptive design, ang purpose niya lang talaga is to describe, again, to describe our sample or our population in terms of anything that we want to measure. So, depende sa variable ng ating study or depende sa frequency of outcomes ng ating interest. So, again, purely description. So, unlike the analytical design or the experimental design, we don't have comparison for descriptive studies. We don't have interventions. We don't have comparison. So, we don't compare groups. Okay? Wala tayong kino-compare na cohorts dito or groups. So descriptive designs include, or descriptive studies include case reports, case series reports, may mga cross-sectional studies, surveys are under descriptive design, and ecological studies. So for example, we have here Chim et al. Conducted a large population-based survey in Australia to determine what community members think about the factors that do and should influence government spending on prescribed medicines. So anong ibig sabihin yan? Nag-conduct ng survey. Anong gustong makuha? Perception. Diba when you say what the community thinks, we are dealing here with perception. So at the end of the study, you will be describing now the perception of your population. So that is classed a descriptive study. So studies like level of knowledge, attitude, level of academic performance, and yung mga practices na yan, those are descriptive studies because at the end of those studies class, you will just be describing them according sa variable na mi-measure mo. Kung level of knowledge, then i-describe mo lang based on what I have gathered, mataas pala yung level of knowledge ng community about a certain topic. That's purely description. So again, descriptive design ang tawag dyan. Now, analytical design. This is another design under the study purpose class, based on study purpose. Ano naman ang gustong makuha ni analytical design? Kung si descriptive design is the description, this time naman sa analytical design are the factors, whether these are risk factors, associated factors, or mediating factors. But analytical design can either be experimental or observational. Okay? Pwede siya experimental, pwede siya observational. Now, para sa observational na studies class, meron tayong dalawang klaseng analytical design. Specific ha, analytical design ito pero under siya sa observational. Ang tawag sa kanila, case control and cohort studies. Now, paano nag-differ ang case control and cohort studies? Let's start with case control. I will no longer read this. I don't like reading the PowerPoint presentation. So let's focus here sa diagram. Actually, mas maintindihan mo ito kaysa sa mga nakasulat dyan na masyadong marami. Pag sinabing case control study class, take note of this one. Study begins here. Saan siya magsa-start? In the present. Again, in the present siya magsa-start. And then, anong gagawin mo? You will have two groups of participants. The case and the control. Kaya nga siya tinawag na case control studies. So, sino yung mga participants na nasa group na tinatawag na case? Ito yung mga subjects na may outcome of interest. Meaning, kung sakit ang tinitingnan natin, class, ito yung mga taong merong sakit at the present. Example, diabetes. So you have here people with diabetes. Now for the control, subjects without the outcome of interest. So ito naman yung mga taong na-identify mo at present time na walang diabetes. So actually si case control study mo rin siya og retrospective na balikan mo sa past. So take note of the arrow, balik ka, measure and evaluate the past. But this is specific sa factors, risk factors. So pag binalikan mo itong mga taong nagkaroon ng diabetes, titingnan mo ngayon ano yung mga risk factors nila na present, ano yung mga risk factors na absent. And ganun din ang gagawin mo sa control group mo. So hindi mo siya pwedeng ilagay sa descriptive design kasi sabi ko nga kanina, ang descriptive design walang comparison. Dito meron tayong comparison. Iko-compare natin ang case group and ang control group. And at the end of the study, ang ma-identify natin yung risk factors na magkukos na magkaroon ang person ng outcome of interest or yung sakit. Or yung sa example ko, diabetes. So another illustration here for the case control. Again, the study will start here. Identification of the case and the control group. The case will be those na merong disease and then yung control yung walang disease. And you will go back to the past, look at their past exposures. Kung anong mga factors ang nag-contribute, bakit nagkaroon sila ng sakit or bakit hindi sila nagkaroon ng sakit. So that is the purpose of the case control. Now, paano naman, before that, let me add more examples for this. A group of investigators carried out a study to establish an association between the use of traditional eye medicines and corneal ulcers. So ang gagawin mo, meron kang group na case, sino yun? Yung mga nagkaroon ng corneal ulcer, and then meron kang control group, yung mga walang corneal ulcer. And then you will go back to the past. Again, babalik ka sa past kung sino-sino dito yung gumamit ng traditional eye medicine. So si traditional eye medicine will become now a factor. Pero actually, itong study na to can be case control and pwede din siyang cohort. Pero later, i-discuss ko yung cohort naman. Yung case muna, case control muna. Case and control and then balikan mo sa past yung exposure or factor. And then another thing we have here, an investigation in the association between aspirin and statins, exclusive and combined, and pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma occurrence. So pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma is a type of cancer, syempre, in the pancreas. So that will be your case. Yung mga taong nagkaroon ng carcinoma and then yung mga hindi nagkaroon ng carcinoma. And babalikan natin sa past class whether they have exposure in the use of aspirin, of statins, whether they use it exclusively or gi-combine nila ang duha. So at the end of this study, the researcher have actually identified whether the aspirin and the statins are factors contributing to the development of this disease. Okay, that is the use of the case control design. Questions about the case control design? Alin dun yung hindi naintindihan? Wala? Dili nato ni siya mahimo karon class ha, kay dugay ni siya mahuman nga study. So wala nato siya ginahimo sa undergrad na study kay di mo ka graduate. Pero wala man ta kabalupuhon, basig na yung mahimong researcher sa inyo ha. Like sa mga public health na things, no? You have your public health last time. Kung na ay mahimong researcher class, a lot of researchers are doing case control or cohort studies. Now, anong kaibahan ng case control and the cohort? Look at the diagram. I will no longer read the definition here. Just look at the diagram here. Where does the study begin? It's still in the identification of the samples, but hindi ka doon sa outcome. Magsa-start ka ngayon sa factors. Baliktad sila ha. Si case control, meron ng outcome. I mean, andyan na, outcome, case and the control. Tapos balikan mo yung past for the factors. This time for the cohort, you will be identifying the factors first and then titingnan mo kung magkakaroon ba sila ng outcome of interest. Pero si cohort, pwede siyang retrospective, pwede siyang prospective. So, pwedeng combination of the two. Pag sinabing retrospective cohort, you will look at the past, pero yung titingnan mo sa past, yung mga factors. So, ito siya, itong subject na ito, may factors, na-expose siya sa ganitong factor, and then you have another group here na hindi na-expose sa specific factor. So, syempre, at zero time, yung may mga outcomes na hindi mo na siya isasali sa study mo. Kaya as you can see, this one, ito, excluded na ito. So, this one is in the past ha. Titingnan mo muna kung alin sa kanila yung may mga exposure sa factors. And then, titingnan mo sa present, sino-sino sa kanila ang nagkaroon ng outcome or hindi nagkaroon ng outcome of interest kahit na na-expose sila. So, ganun din yung gagawin mo, class, for those group na or for those people na hindi na-expose sa certain factor. Bimilangin mo rin sino yung nagkaroon ng outcome of interest and sino yung hindi nagkaroon. So, yung outcome of interest dyan, most of the time, disease yan siya. Okay? Pero retrospective, ito ha, kasi nagsistart ka sa past and then mag-e-end ka sa present. Pero pag sinabing prospective cohort, take note, parehas lang ito na diagram, ang nagkaiba lang, present. Ngayon, present ka mag-check for the risk factors. Example, meron akong grupo na smoker. The factor here is smoking. So I have one group for smoker and then I have one group for non-smoker. And then present time. And then susundan ko sila. Example, magsiset ako ng time after 10 years. Dugaya mahuman sa mong research. After 10 years lang, for example, susundan natin sila. After 10 years, i-identify ko sino yung nagkaroon ng lung cancer dito sa mga smoker and sino yung hindi. And then dito rin sa mga hindi smoker, ilan sa kanila ang nagkaroon ng lung cancer sa future after 10 years and ilan din sa kanila yung hindi nagkaroon. Para at the end of the research, I can conclude if smoking ba talaga is a factor contributing to having lung cancer or not. Yun ang kanyang purpose. So, I hope hindi kayo na confuse between case control and cohort. Si case control, start with the disease, go back to the past for the factors. Sa cohort, start with the factors and follow your subjects whether they have developed the outcome of interest or not. So to be specific, aside from the lung cancer, we have here identification of the factor. The factor is asbestos. So I have one group here that are exposed to asbestos, and then another group na not exposed to asbestos, and then I will follow them over time kung sino-sino sa kanila ang nakadevelop ng disease called mesothelioma. Mesothelioma is a lung condition resembling tuberculosis, but syempre it's not caused by bacteria, but instead it's caused by asbestos. But the signs and symptoms resembles TB. Okay? Questions about the analytical design, specifically the cohort and the case control? I hope naintindihan yon. Wala ba? Walang question? So let us continue. We have here classification based on investigator orientation. Kagaya sa akin, ang orientation ko is since I'm on the pharmacy na field, I'm more on discovering drugs. So I'll have to do experimentation. That's my orientation. So syempre, the first design here under the based on investigator orientation is the experimental design. So anong kaibahan ngayon ng experimental design? Sa analytical design, analytical design is purely looking into the factors. The descriptive is looking for the description of your population. But when you say experimental, the key word here is intervention. We are giving intervention so as to establish cause and effect relationship. Okay? So example, magbuhat kog tambal na ko, antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral. I want to make vaccines for COVID-19. Experimental yan because I'm looking for an intervention for a certain disease. Okay? So like this one, for example, itong hypertensive patient. So check ko kung ano ba yung mas effective, yung older drugs or yung newer drugs, combination or single drug man yan siya. As long as I'm giving intervention, it's experimental design. Now, for the illustration, syempre you have the study sample and then you will also have groups here for comparison. So the group A will be having the intervention, example plant material na antibacterial. So ito yung lalagyan ko ngayon ng plant material and then I have the control na hindi ko bibigyan ng intervention or the plant material, and then afterwards I'll be measuring whatever I want to measure. Like for the antibacterial agent, I'll be measuring the zone of inhibition for me to know if the antibacterial agent is effective or not. But take note, itong naka-bold dito, there should be randomization in the assignment. Kailangan kung identify ka ng sample mo, when you group them to sa group A and sa group B, there should be randomization. Hindi pwede na kaning tanan dool sa aqua mo ni ang mag-receive sa intervention. Katong mga nasa layo kay control to sila, dili to sila hatagan og intervention. No, that's not randomization. Pag randomization, you are giving all the members of the population or the sample, you're giving equal chance for them to be grouped to whatever group na mabilong sila. So we can do fishbowl method or lottery method. So kung kinsay mong mabunot, mo ni ang nasa group A, kaning sunod ni mo mabunot sa group B, pero all of them actually has equal chance kay nasa sila sa sulod sa fishbowl. Okay? That is experimental. Pero paano, ma'am, paano kung walay randomization? We call it quasi-experimental. If you look at the illustration class, parehas lang. You have the sample, i-group na to sila, intervention and control, and then i-measure na to ang outcome. Pero what is missing here? There is non-random assignment. Ako na magbuot. Kung napakoy ilaga class, kaning mga puti tanan ilaga dito ni sila sa group A. Tas kaning mga ilaga nga dili ta mo gamit og itom na ilaga ha, racist din hinaside because we cannot observe body interaction sa drugs kung itom ang ilaga. So kaning mga naipuntik-puntik na ilaga, example na sila brown gamay nga color, dito na sila sa group B. That is not actually random assignment. Kay ikaw may namili ikaw na nagbuot-buot. So kung ingana imo ang gibuhat, dili na siya matawag as true experimental but rather quasi-experimental design. So I hope na sabtan class ang difference ni experimental o ni quasi-experimental. Ano ilang kalahian? Walay randomization. Okay? Kaya randomization actually avoids bias. Okay? Okay, sige Claire. Now, observational design, I told you a while ago that observational design can be under na siya sa analytical design, di ba? Under to siya sa purpose, sa when it comes to classification. Pero actually, observational design can also be classified here under sa investigator orientation. Pero the same lang na sila, cohort o case control. You are observing the occurrence of a phenomenon and you are going to know the factors. Kung kana imuhang orientation factor lang yun, dili ka gusto mag-intervention, observational design na siya. But among the designs class na ako ang na-mention, actually ang pinaka-ginagamit nowadays is this classification based on question orientation. And mo niya akong ginabalik-balik sa inyo ha. Pirmi, from the start, you have to know whether your study is quali or quanti. Again, quali or quanti ba ang imuhang study. So, syempre, pag quali, that's a product of an interview or observation and you don't have numerical data. Just like exploring the, what we call that, experience of, example, medical technologists during COVID-19 pandemic. So, we cannot actually quantify experience and we cannot do generalization. So under quali na siya. Pero if you look at your research and yes, you can produce numerical data, then that will be under the quantitative research. And then we have here the mixed method design, wherein for example, master's na study or doctorate na study, they actually mix everything. They have the quali and the quanti. So naa sila interview portion, naa sila linguistic data, and then napod sila example experimentation or survey wherein they produce numerical data. So mo na siyang tawag na mixed method design. So what you are going to do in your methodology section is to identify what research design are you going to use in your study. So let me give you an example. This is after na sa RRL ha. Okay. Sige, let us have this one. Maguba lang ang format niya kay syempre pag send, pag nagka-document maguba na siya. So again, this is after class B RRL. You will have a separate section, we call it methodology, and you'll have to have an introductory paragraph kung unsay sulod aning methodology section, and the first subsection there is the research design. Okay, so you have to identify what research design is best applicable to your study. So sige butang nila diri, actually they define first what research design is, and then unsa ilahang research design daw, quantitative. So this one uses quantitative method. Pero take note, hindi pa tayo nag-e-end dyan. Isusulat kasi ninyo na quantitative yung study ninyo or qualitative, and you have to define what quantitative or qualitative research is. But after that, you have to identify the specific design. Quantitative no, pero may mga specific design pa kasi under quantitative. So if you read their research design further, you can see there their specific design. Researchers employ descriptive research design, specifically correlational. So dili lang tataman sa quanti. Sa finals, I will discuss more about the descriptive, and syempre under sa descriptive na pag yung specific pag yun na type, and we have here the correlational. And yun yung i-discuss nyo ngayon sa research design. You have to describe what quanti is, what descriptive is, and what correlational study design is. And you have to explain also why nga nung nakaingon man mo na quantitative, descriptive, correlational design inyuhang study. Okay? So, mo na siya inyuhang himuon. Kung sa part po sa pharma, ano itong study sa pharma? Let's see. After their RRL, sobra na hinuon. Sige, sulat nila din. Okay. So again, methodology, and then they have this introductory paragraph kung sa isulod ani nga section, and then let's look at their research design. This study utilized quantitative, so quantitative gihapon, pero they have here experimental study. Again, experimental siya na design, specifically pre- and post-test control group study design. So I have mentioned what quantitative research is, and then since they have they're doing intervention, so this is specifically experimental design. Pero under sa experimental design, may mga specific pa tayo na designs class. Ang kanila, ang ginamit nila kay pre-test and pre- and post-test control group. So mo na siyang ako ang i-discuss sa finals. Okay? Questions? Okay. Anong difference ni theoretical and si conceptual framework? Ganito. Si theoretical framework class is the theory wherein you will anchor your study. For most of the descriptive study, you are going to look for educational theory or psychological theory. Let us see anong theory ang gamit nitong medical fake news. Wait lang. Oh, this one. Okay, what theory ang ginamit nila? The study, like this one, ang title ng study na ito is Medical Fake News and Fear-Mongering During COVID-19 Pandemic, the Influence on Vaccine Confidence Among Millennials in General Santos City. So anong theory ang ginamit nila to anchor this study? The study is anchored on the health belief model. This is the theory, health belief model, and it was developed by Erwin M. Rosenstock, and this one, I don't know how to pronounce that one. Tapos, i-discuss mo anong nilalaman ng theory na yan, and bakit mo nasabi na related siya sa study mo. So ano palang ibig sabihin ng health belief model? The model's goal is to predict health-related behaviors, especially when engaging with health services. Kasi 'di ba, ang tinitingnan nila dito kung may influence ba ang medical fake news and fear mongering sa confidence ng vaccine confidence ng mga millennials. And then ang sabi ng health belief model, ang goal nito is to predict health-related behaviors, especially yung mag-engage ka nga sa mga health services. Like having vaccine is actually a health service. So your decision of getting the vaccine is influenced by something. Ito yung sinasabi ng health belief model. So sa theoretical framework nyo, hanapin nyo anong model or anong theory ang applicable sa study ninyo. And then, i-discuss mo yan siya dyan sa theoretical framework. You have to name also the person who coined the theory or the model. Pero pagdating sa conceptual framework class, ang laman ng conceptual framework is ang variables mo, the independent and the dependent variable. So, i-discuss mo na ito yung mga independent and dependent variable mo, and then sa baba, you will be making a figure. So you have there the independent variable, lagay mo siya sa box. Ito yung minamanipulate mo sa study. And then you have an arrow pointing towards the dependent variable. Si dependent variable naman is the outcome variable. Yan yung i-measure mo ngayon sa study mo. So kagaya sa study nila, medical fake news and fear-mongering during COVID-19 pandemic, yan yung kanilang predictor variable, independent variable nila. Ano yung i-measure nila? Ang influence niyan doon sa vaccine confidence. So ito yung dependent variable. So yan yung kaibahan ni theoretical and ni conceptual framework. Actually, that is also true for the experimental na study. If we will look at the study of the pharma sa experimental, let's go back a little bit. Sa introduction kasi yan siya na part. So, As you can see here, they have the theoretical framework. Now, since this is experimental, we don't really have a theory sa science for this. So, ang ginawa nila, na-mention ko to kanina, naghanap sila ng pwedeng possible reasons bakit nila nasabi na si rambutan is having this blood sugar lowering activity. So kung babasahin natin yung theoretical framework nila, actually mga studies ang nakalagay dyan na si rambutan daw ay merong ganitong mga phytochemicals. And itong phytochemical na na-mention nila dito, according din sa mga studies like ito, gallic acid, meron daw siyang activity for blood glucose lowering. So hindi siya necessarily theory talaga or model, as long as it can explain why you have considered that kind of material in your study. Pwede mo siyang ilagay sa theoretical framework. And lastly, kasi 1131 na conceptual framework always have the independent and the dependent variable with the diagram, with the figure and the explanation. Okay? I hope I have answered your question. Anything else before tayo mag-end? Maniud to na ta. Kaya nilampas na kog 2 minutes. It's 11:32. Wala na ba? Wala na yung pangutana, no?